Well, I'll tell you what, I want to introduce to you somebody that needs no introduction. It's Lance Wallnau. And the way God's been using him recently is he's crossing over to a much broader audience in the secular media because they can't ignore us anymore. They can't ignore the force of the Christian nationalist slur, which they've tried to put on us, that label. They can't ignore it. People are listening. Millions and millions of people. We've seen our views on this show skyrocket in the last 2 weeks. And I'm sure that tonight, many, many people want to know Lance Wallnau's view on the issues of the debate. What did it do? What does it show us? And going forward, what are we going to do? So it's going to be a very powerful interview. So I want to welcome Lance Wallnau right now to Firepower.
Great to be back with the crew, Three Musketeers.
Yes, it's great to have you. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, well, so we're coming out of this debate, Lance, and I've been looking forward to hearing what your thoughts are on this. A lot of people emailing me. I'm sure you're getting a lot of comments and people writing you and wanting to hear what you have to say. A lot of folks feel like it was rigged, kind of like something else that we know that we can't talk about. A lot of people are saying 3 against 1. A lot of people feel like it was totally biased. I personally feel like it was almost like they were trying to draw President Trump in to get him angry or to prove their narrative, their false narrative. And plus, they brought up almost every conspiratorial left-wing story and talking point that they've had. I mean, they literally hit all of them, and so they wanted President Trump on the defense, it seems. What say you, sir?
Yeah, well, for those that didn't follow the debate or didn't watch it or only caught a little bit of it, let me summarize it for you. Trump went in to the same thing he had at Butler when they tried to kill him. He went into a kill box, and the kill box was made up of Disney, the corporate left-wing board that owns ABC. The producers are friends of the Democrat elites and particularly Kamala Harris. They allowed her to get access to all the questions they were going to ask. They had coordinated coverage in such a way that the two of them would tag team against Trump with fact-checking to keep him from being able to make any point that wasn't contradicted without any fact-checking of her. So she had literally blocking and tackling to present 21 accusations and false pieces of information that are all easily refutable an hour later, but the fact-checkers had no facts to check there. Anytime that question was brought up, it was negative on Trump, trying to get him to clarify something negative about him, and then asking Kamala her opinion on the negativity. And so it was an absolute setup. And Trump, should he have done it? The problem that we have, and Benny Johnson makes the statement, and it does raise your blood pressure, because he says the Republican Party is an equal player in this thing. Why do they sign off on sending their politicians into the enemy's territory where they set up the moderators, they control the questions, they can leak the information, and they can pile on our candidate? Why not have a neutral zone? Why not have Dan Bongino and Hannity or Charlie Kirk also asking questions? The point is, Republicans like Ahab in the Bible accommodate Jezebel. And what you're seeing now is a real Jezebel. You're going to see a lot of people saying that. It doesn't, it's like Pentecostal 101 when you've got somebody operating in manipulation, intimidation, and domination, especially when it's in a female role, trying to emasculate a man who is standing up for truth. You're dealing with the Jezebel spirit. That setup empowered that spirit to make the case that Kamala no longer has to talk about avoiding the media, because she made up for it by a media exposition that makes her look ready to take command. And that was all they wanted to do.
Yep.
Well, I not only agree with that, I tell you what, that assessment is so important, folks. What you just heard needs to go out. And as Todd said at the beginning, you need to share this show right now. You need to let people know, because that is an important point, what was just made. When I wrote a blog the day today I wrote a blog about the unfairness, and yesterday I wrote one where I said it was going to be rigged. I said it was going to be 3 against 1. And there was no doubt in my mind that she already had the question. She already had it. And the object of it was to get Trump to get angry. And so I have a question. Will this unfairness, these easily refutable lies that she spoke, is this going to backfire in a way and end up in a strange way helping Trump? Do you believe that that's possible, Lance?
I believe. All right, so there's three different aspects to this. It's kind of a complex enchilada there that you brought up. One is we're living in a different media age. It's not as though everybody's watching the full debate and that's the only impression. In the internet world, the memes are kings.
Come on.
That means that it takes you 24 hours to see how the meme wars play out, because all over the internet, what you're going to be looking for is snapshots and sound bites. It's going to be those quick moments when Trump offers a MAGA hat or says, I'm talking, or when you see her misquoting something and then somebody puts the actual quote up. She says that, I've never been against people, having firearms. And then it's the picture of her saying she wants to do a buyback of all firearms and AR-15s. It's going to be the ability of the internet and the army of media savvy activists that levels the playing field. So you have the initial moment of the debate that I said worked to her advantage, clearly, because every question that Trump got was a controversy he had to clarify, and everything she said was a lie about him that they didn't correct. So it was set up that way. So first point is there's two echoes to this. The first is the immediate echo. Yeah, I am upset. I'm upset because, remember, Trump is not a debater. He always does well. But if you really think about it, Ben Shapiro is a debater.
Right.
Ted Cruz is a debater.
Right.
Chris Christie. Trump beat the debaters because he had great sound bites for the average American. So he's a communicator, not a debater. So he missed some layups that he had. And the opportunity to be able to say to Kamala, I'm going to give you a minute of my soundbite right now. I need that minute. But I'm going to give it to you because you didn't answer what I just said. Tell me the difference between Bidenomics and your economics, and how are you going to help solve the economic problem? Because I don't believe you understand business, and I think that's where America needs competence. So take my minute. Explain to me your economic plan. Right. And if she doesn't do it, give another minute. And what will happen is you'll see her scripted response collapse because it is cosmetic. I told people, I warned them. I said, just because she's word salad and ditzy when you hit her with a question on the tarmac doesn't mean she isn't a trained lawyer, that if she got her brief and knows exactly what article and argument she's going to prosecute, she'll go in. You've got to get her off the script. And that's the thing Trump needed to do. So he had some layups he missed. And that's from the frustration when she's lying. The other thing I think he could have done is break the third wall. You got the two moderators. Once he knows that they're playing unfairly, he's allowed to talk to the camera and say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so desperate to get her out here to expose herself, to reveal that she has no policy consistency or depth, that I'm actually dealing with two people here that are working for her right now to make me look stupid. They're only fact-checking me. Have you noticed that, America? See, that's the Trump that breaks the third wall. And I'm convinced that the handlers that handled him, because he's more mature now, and that's a disadvantage. In this sense, I think that Kellyanne Conway's and others said, whatever you do, don't come off like you're beating up on her, because it's going to play well with the female vote, play badly. You've got to really be careful how you handle her. Push back on her thinking, but not on her. And don't act like in any way you're emotionally temperamental about the format. And I think that was a mistake. I think Trump instinctively would have played that a little differently if he wasn't conditioned by, this is what you need to do before he went in. But that's a whole lot to throw at you. I think that the base is now even more torqued over what they saw happen. So if the goal is to mobilize your base with a debate performance, I think that it isn't that he lost. It's that he got beat up and mugged in the alley. And that provokes, when he mentioned the assassination, when he said that kind of destructive Hitler rhetoric that is trying to make me sound like a dictator is the reason why somebody tried to shatter my skull with a bullet. The moment he said that, they were ready. The moderator says, hold it. We have a lot of material we have to cover now. We can't get into that. You're darn right. They didn't want to get into the Butler assassination attempt and what's happening in America. And they were scripted to interrupt any momentum Trump had. That's playing to his base. Now, the Democrats, on the other hand, they're popping the champagne cork, and they are euphoric that they believe Kamala beat him up, that you'll see some surveys out there, 63 to 35. But I'm a Christian. I'm not a bettor. I don't work the tracks. But in Vegas, I do pay attention to the betting on the election. After the debate, the betting didn't change, which tells me something. That the sharp people say the media set this up so the media can do a victory lap. But I don't think there was any TKOs or knockouts there. I think Trump and her both walk out to the next act. I don't think she accomplished what they say she did. So the betting people in Vegas are saying, nope, I think Trump still has a 1 to 2 point lead, because whatever poll you're looking at, I don't mean to keep going, but I miss you guys. I haven't talked to
No, come on, man.
When I talk to Mario and I get on the phone, we go for an hour.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is the polls have him tied or behind. But you got to know that all those polls, with the exception of a few, are always 2 to 4 points underestimating Trump, which means that their sampling is skewing the data so that it gives the Democrats more advantage. All we are now is back where Biden was before Biden screwed up in his debate.
Come on. It's like a suppression poll, basically, is what you're saying. And they try to get people to be disillusioned and down about what's actually happening. You know, you and I travel a lot, Lance. I talk to a lot of Uber drivers. I talk to folks in the airport, on the airplanes. I've never seen, it seems like there's a groundswell, like there's a massive amount of people that are supporting Trump, even African-American voters, way up, Hispanic voters, way up. Now, I come from Hollywood. You know my story. What I saw from Kamala last night, she appeared to be an actress. To me, I'm just saying my opinion, it seems like she had the questions ahead of time. We know there's precedent for that because that's happened in the past. I remember Donna Brazile, so a lot of folks on the internet right now are putting this whole thing about this earring and all that. I'm sure you've seen that. But, at the very least, it seems to me that there was some on her part. She was prepared and she may have known the questions. Donald Trump's the kind of guy that when he comes in, he said, give it to me, whatever you got. And he'll answer it. Look at his press conferences. This is a guy that's not afraid to get in front of the camera. Kamala has barely done any press conferences because she stumbles on her words unless she's super prepared. What would you say about that? Did you feel that there was any colluding ahead of time? Or
I would say, of course, it was clear that she had her dossier, that all the questions, the producers are friends of hers. You understand that? That's like Mario inviting me on this show right now and me and him trying to set me up to talk about the Turkish economy or something. No, I know exactly what we were going to talk about before we got on. We didn't have collusion of what we were going to say, but I knew the subject. She knew the questions. And not only did she know the questions, but she was able to have crafted answers. And one of the other great memes that's going to get out there is when Trump said to her, oh, that's good. That was one of those sound bites that they wrote for you to work in there. In other words, he called out that she had a scripted response that she worked into the conversation. He basically pointed out to the audience that was given to her to stick in there right there. And so I'm of the opinion that the independents, that's the 20% out there, that the base on both sides is locked in. No Democrat got persuaded by Trump. No Republican or conservative got persuaded by Kamala. But what was accomplished was she can look presidential. And we'll go to this later. That's the seduction of what I would say is witchcraft. That's the manipulation of imagery that creates an impression contrary to the truth. but it seduces you into seeing it. So that spirit, that occult spirit, I believe is operating on her and through her, similar to with Obama, that there's a kind of an angel of light, charisma. You can see it at the DNC. And so when you're up against that, the good news is if we're going to go full tilt Pentecostal, Jezebel may be the spirit you're up against, but then Trump has like an Elijah mantle on him, probably from the intercession of a million Christians. Something's on him that makes him Teflon. He's Teflon. He's like, I told him when I met him, I said, Washington in one battle with the, when he was on the side of the Brits, he had 4 bullet holes through his coat. I said, and the reason why he came out of combat with 2 horses shot out from under him and 4 bullet holes through his coat is because the hand of God was on him and grace was on him to be president. And I feel like that's the grace we're praying on to Trump. But these moments like last night, I understand the frustration because we're watching manipulation and domination always coming at the truth and doing it in the guise of being true, but it's a lie. And that is intensely frustrating for prophetic people to see that happen. The base is torqued out. They're ready to go. 20% of the country is undecided. That's the battleground right there. It's the Elijah Jezebel thing. How long will you halt between 2 opinions? Well, I like this. And I think if there's a wild card in there, I want to say that RFK is a more formidable contributor to what's going to happen next than we realize. More so than the vice presidents. The vice presidents aren't going to determine this. But there's a number of people that weren't impressed with Trump or Harris or Biden that are anti. This COVID thing has really traumatized a lot of people. There's a distrust of the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes.
And like it or not, that group it's bigger than you think. It's at least 4% of the electorate, 5%, so much so they look at the pharmaceutical companies and vaccines as the number 1 issue. It's not immigration. It's not the economy. It's being forced to have to be under the tyranny of a vaccine mandate. They remember that they were the Kennedy voters, environmentalists, and they love their children, and they distrust pharmaceuticals and government. All he's got to do is deliver half of his 5% of those independents. And he has made up for the margin that the manipulation will cost Trump for the low information voter that gets seduced by sound bites rather than by the truth.
Here's what happened. When you said that there is this deception and these smoke and mirrors and seduction, and she's cosmetically altered for the sake of the election, ABC News telegraphed to us that she's unqualified by the way they handled her. You know, it was very interesting when Henry VIII wanted to get married again. People started sending him paintings of potential wives. And the more beautiful they were, the more simple their dress was. And the more plain they were, the more ornate they pictured her with jewels and stuff all around her. What ABC has told us is we can't talk about substance. We can't talk about policy. We can't demonstrate her experience. So what we've got to do is change the rules and make it about being likable and presentable. But we're going to show you a video right now, and I want to comment on it, and then I'm going to throw it back to you, Lance. But somehow sanity prevailed in an unexpected way on CNN. And so let's roll that video right now, and then we'll comment on it.
What did you see that brought you to a conclusion?
I think it's important to remember that we are voting for the leader of our country and not who we like the most or who we want in our wedding party, but who is actually going to make our country better. And we're in an incredibly unique situation where we've had both of the candidates in office before, and we've gotten to see what they would do. And when facts come to facts, my life was better when Trump was in office. The economy was higher, inflation was lower, things were better overall. And now with Kamala's administration, things haven't been so fantastic. And she's saying she can fix the problems that her administration has caused, but I just don't know if I can afford to take that risk.
I mean, there's so much to unpack there. First of all, there was such a well-spoken young lady, and there wasn't any wasted words. It was so common sense. And I think common sense is going to kind of come back. Like ABC said, that's what we don't want you to see. That's what we wanted to deflect. We wanted to make, she connected Kamala to, she said they were both in office, and we can compare what the world was like when either one of them was in power. And she said, we're not picking someone that we would invite to our wedding party. We're picking the leader of the free world. ABC News told us that. We can't make this about qualification. We can't make it about substance. We've got to go in another direction. So that, I feel, is an essential point to make. And that's what the people of God need to focus on right now, that I think people are going to realize that. So Lance, comment on that video right there.
So I agree with you. What that young lady is saying is that Trump is a known. And, the theme is people are always voting and looking for change. Well, that depends. That depends on whether the change that Harris and Biden represent is a change in the direction you want to move in. Sometimes people want to go back to something that's lost. And so the idea that she's saying we were better off, I would say that the two data points that are to Trump's advantage is immigration with him. People think he'll handle it better, obviously, than Harris, who's got them hemorrhaging over the border, and economy. And they really believe that Trump would do better with the economy. But he would do better with foreign wars, too. There were none, which is why it's infuriating when you look at the lies that were said. I mean, flat out falsehoods that, that Trump was the reason why Afghanistan didn't go right. I mean, this is a maddening principle of leadership that really bothers me about government. It's a real character flaw that is deadly. The inability to learn from a mistake or take responsibility for a decision. Great leaders take responsibility. Bad leaders blame someone else for their own stupid choices. And in the Democrat Party, Trump's to blame for everything, including stuff they did. So I think that the advice that I would give to Donald Trump is, God bless him, he's so optimistic. When he heard that Kamala Harris wanted to do another debate, he assumed it was because she did poorly and she's trying to recover. Actually, the reality is they could do these debates, if he'll permit them, all day long, because she's not debating. She's getting talking points and regurgitating the lines, letting the moderators protect her. What Trump needs to do is to say, I will do another debate on these conditions. We're not going to have moderators interfere with the debate like you just did. We're not going to have three of you against me. The American people have a right to know what's going on. It'll be you and me, no individuals involved. You're going to be given a question. You're going to answer it. I get 30 seconds to rebut your reply. I'm going to get a question. I answer it. You got 30 seconds to rebut and reply. We're going to go down the 5 key issues. The American people are going to hear us. And without that, we don't have a debate, because I'm not walking into another manipulated commercial for ABC.
That's good. Yeah. And, one thing that people tend to like is they support the underdog. And I think that this could actually backfire, because it was like the man, the system against the underdog. You had 3 against 1. She looked, sometimes people like the unpolished, so that might actually work to Trump's advantage. And the other side of it is they go to the grocery store, they go to the gas pump, and, their bills are double. I think every American has that. You got cities like Springfield that are being taken over. They tried to laugh that off, but the reality is there's all these citizen journalists, as you know, Lance, that are going there and interviewing folks, and they're getting quite a different story. President Trump, after, I think you mentioned this a few seconds ago, but, after the debate, he said, it's the loser that usually requests redo. And so the fact that she's requesting it, he says, that kind of makes me feel like she felt like she didn't do good. So I think it's important that Christians, we don't buy into their narrative and what they want us to feel like, but we understand the significance of this battle, which of course is spiritual. And we mentioned it quite a bit. We have another clip I want to play real quick, and then you can comment on this as well, where President Trump is actually talking about some of what we just talked about. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed. Mr. Those President, people are killing many people, unlike J6.
What are your thoughts on that, Lance?
You see how they tried to shut him up, Lance? Go ahead.
Oh, of course. Now, and there's two other thoughts here I got. One is, and it's almost politically incorrect to talk about, but, you know, Kamala, just as Trump had to be careful not to appear to be violating some code of chivalry in dealing with a female opponent. He could talk ideas, but he couldn't get it personal, where she could get personal with him. There's another side to that, and that is her posturing, her making those studied expressions of the hand under the chin as I'm contemplating and thinking, and all the artificial and I would say distracting facial expressions that were going on were, for the most part, in a category of condescension and superiority and offense. Now, here's the point. Those sound bites and those snapshots is what goes out in the meme world. That's the 20% of independents, a lot of them are Latino males, African-American males, and white guys that are undecided. They're into hunting, they're into fishing, and being basically libertarian. They don't want to get involved in politics. But she runs the risk of coming off as a pedantic, condescending school teacher who is scolding the man and making him look little. And the risk that they have is nobody's calculated yet whether the males that are watching that are in the persuasion group aren't finding her a bit condescending and disrespectful, where Trump is getting like a bull with a matador, stabbing him from 3 directions, and she's one of them doing it, and she's doing it with evident disdain for him. And I think that plays poorly. The second thing is, I wish Donald Trump, would just expand his script, because he's so good at communicating simple thoughts to the average American. But in a debate, he should quote something like this: based on your own data, since you and Biden have been in office, 20 million illegals, foreigners, have come into the United States. They have not been vetted. And now we have more military-aged men that are representing other countries in our border than we actually have uniformed soldiers that are prepared to go to war. In other words, you've let an invasion happen with military-age males, and none of them have been vetted. 15 million of them.
Yep.
Bam. And you know what else? You notice how he would ask her a question directly. She'd refuse to answer it. Do you believe that there can be abortion as late as full term, 9 months? Do you believe it? She never answered. When he wouldn't answer a question, the moderators would press him to try to get him to force an answer. What is your answer? What is your answer? They totally ignored her. They just moved on. And when the issue of immigration came on, and he said, why don't we do this? You have the power to shut the border right now. Folks, everybody watching needs to hear this. Right? I mean, please, God, get this point across. They can close the border right now, today. And last night in that debate, Trump said, why don't you close it? Why don't you close it? She didn't answer. What the moderators would have done in any other debate is say, well, Kamala, what is your answer? You have the power to close it. Why should anyone believe that if you're elected, you're going to go ahead and close it then if you have the power already and you're not closing it? And anyone that isn't noticing that happened last night, I mean, you got to be blind as a bat not to see it. It is absolutely the most subtly manipulative part is that she was not held accountable to answer questions. He was.
No, of course not. And Ben Shapiro made a great point. He said he wished that Trump, who saved his clothes, obviously for the end, that if you had such vision and skill and creativity and resolve, why are you waiting for 4 years to do something? Right. You could have been doing it for the last 3.5 years. You're only saying it now because you're trying to get elected. You're a typical Washington swamp politician.
That's right.
And basically that's the truth. But he should have said at the beginning and constantly say, what's holding you back, Kamala? Why aren't you doing that now? You know why you're not doing it now? You're not doing it now because this isn't your position. You're adopting this in order to parrot me so that you can get elected. I get that. Yep. I've been beaten up by media. 90% positive coverage from ABC on Kamala Harris. 92% negative on Trump. I get how this game is played. You're trying to make it a personality contest. I can't win that contest because the game is rigged, but I can get the American people prosperous and you can't.
That's right. That's right. In the beginning, they had asked the question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? You know, if you think about it, the last 16 years, 12 of those years has been run by basically the same administration, the Obamaites of the world. She's just another one with a different face. You know, so the great point, what you said, and she never answered that question. I want to play one more video clip because then we really want to get into what you were saying about the witchcraft and the spiritual aspect of this. But this is J.D. Vance, and he's taking on the issue here in an interview about what's going on in Springfield because, of course, they're trying to make this a big issue where President Trump mentioned about dogs and cats. Let's go ahead and play this video right now.
I would say is he brought up this misleading false claim that you yourself have talked about in recent days about Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, abducting people's pets and eating them, which officials there have said is not true. You yourself acknowledged it may be false on Twitter. You still told people to keep spreading it. But Trump just amplified it to tens of millions of people who were watching. Why push something that's not true?
Well, first of all, city officials have not said it's not true. They've said they don't have all the evidence.
They said they have no evidence.
We've heard from a number of constituents on the ground, Caitlin, who both firsthand and secondhand reports saying this stuff is happening. So they very clearly, meaning the people on the ground dealing with this, think that it is happening. And I think that it's important for journalists to actually get on the ground and uncover this stuff for themselves when you have a lot of people saying, my pets are being abducted, or geese at the city pond are being abducted and slaughtered right in front of us. This is crazy stuff. And again, whether those exact rumors turn out to be mostly true, somewhat true, whatever the case may be, Caitlin, this town has been ravaged by 20,000 migrants coming in. Healthcare costs are up. Housing costs are up. Communicable diseases like HIV and TB have skyrocketed in this small Ohio town. This is what Kamala Harris's border policies have done. And I think it's interesting, Caitlin, that the media didn't care about the carnage wrought by these policies until we turned it into a meme about cats. And that speaks to the media's failure to care about what's going on in these communities. If we have to meme about it to get the media to care, we're going to keep on doing it because the media should care about what's going on.
Mic drop. Lance Swalnow, what say you on that?
Yeah, well, I like to watch the news from Europe because I find that in many ways, Europe is a laboratory that is about a year ahead of the United States. When they were going for Brexit, Trump was just coming on the scene. Right. And now what you have is in Germany, you're seeing a far-right party reaction to the realization of the German people that the politicians are playing games on the issue of immigration. The people in England, the people in Germany, and even in France are overwhelmingly voting and saying we're putting in office people that are going to put a stop to the danger of bringing in people that don't fit our culture, that cannot be assimilated. They're not coming because they love Europe or they love freedom or they love Italy or France or Germany. They're coming because of an economic incentive and some kind of a promise that they're getting, but they hate our culture. They despise who we are. They have so for instance, on the front with Kamala Harris, boasting that immigration is down. The immigration is down at the border points, which we're all looking at with cameras right now. But what they've done is they've increased 500,000 immigrants coming in by government paid for commercial airlines. They're flying them in. And so, and they're working with an app and NGOs who get paid by the head with Mexico. They're coming in over land bridges on the west under California. So what you've got is they've got 2 or 3 ways of getting the illegals in while you're looking at the border crossing here in El Paso. They're saying it's down, and then they're flying them in from another location. This is what's maddening, guys, is that these things that we're talking about are not like Haitians eating cats. This is facts. And those facts are killing America. I look at the crime right now that is on the rise in England, and the people are rising up. And what's happening is the populist movement. This is where this could go in America very quickly. The average American is realizing this game that they're playing with our elites, as they're doing with the pharmaceutical, as they're doing with news and media. You begin to distrust the institutions, and then you begin to have a revolt of a different type. That is a true populist, nationalist economic movement.
See, I believe that as a result of this show, Lance, a lot of people that didn't know how to react to the debate last night, good-hearted people are watching right now. I have a feeling that we're going to start something. There's a ripple going to come out of this interview today. And I really believe that the points that have been made on this show are not really being made anywhere. And they are absolutely watertight. And, you know, you look at the thing that J.D. Vance said, 20,000 people were put into a small town. Right. 20,000 people. And we can't call out their misbehavior because they're Haitians. And therefore, any calling out of their behavior is racist. So here's the issue there. What they're trying to tell us is that the illegal immigration is not a crisis. It's not a problem. That's the statement. Why else would you as a interviewer say, well, it's not true that they're eating our pets. It's not true that there's a lot of crime. It's not true that that riot wasn't peaceful. The narrative is all the same. They're trying to say, look, this 20 million people invasion is not what Trump says it is. It's not doing what it says. They even went so far as to say, when Trump says they're taking jobs, well, the jobs numbers show that people aren't losing jobs. African Americans aren't losing jobs because of immigrant. And you wonder, like Shakespeare, you're protesting too much. It's like, you know, this thing is bad and you're trying to sanitize it and you're overdoing it. And I believe it's an underlying knowledge that they're vulnerable on this point, extremely vulnerable. So I think one of the things, like I said, there's going to be a ripple effect to this show. There's going to be something happen because of this show that's going to change the narrative for a lot of people who need to speak up. Trump's the stronger leader. Trump is the answer to the crisis we're in. The people that don't want him are relying on 2 factors. I want you to, and I want to say this. One, there is an elite group of neocons, and it's like Jimmy Dore said. He said the script has been flipped. The Democratic Party is now the party of Wall Street. They are now the party of Big Pharma. They are now the party that is not for the average working man. They are not that. And like to your point, RFK Jr. is going to be that secret weapon. But we've got to understand that's why Cheney and Bush and sided with them. They're part of that neocon, let's have a war, sell some weapons, colonize a country that we don't have any business going into. It's all coming down around them. And those of you that are watching need to listen very carefully. God wants to use you and your voice. Arm yourself with this information. I would even go so far as to say, you know what? This is a program that you need to rewind, look at it again, take notes, and understand that there are so many strong arguments against this woman. It's an incredible thing. And the debate was a speed bump. That's all it was. And now moving forward, we're going to look at the influence of witchcraft on this. All through the program, Lance, you've mentioned Jezebel, Leviathan. Now, you recently revealed a text from a intercessor that had a perspective on what was going on in the world of witchcraft and sorcery before the debate, leading up to it. Just as Christians were mounting up in prayer, the other side was doing something really dark. Talk to us about that, Lance.
Yeah, and it was somebody, the intercessor, who said specifically for Kamala Harris, there are different species of witchcraft and stuff, and the Jamaican witchcraft is particularly strong. So you have Haitian. Oddly enough, the Haitians are in the news, but there might be a connection as to why they're on the air out there. But it's the island witchcraft, Caribbean, Jamaican, Haitian, etc., that is particularly activated and fertile. Now, when you're dealing with occult powers is very simple. No Christian can have influence unless they have the Holy Spirit. For it's not you that speak, but my Spirit speaking through you. And Mario Murillo he goes from being podcaster and news broadcaster up to that platform when I'm with him and steps into the role of the evangelist with a miracle mantle. It's the same guy, but a different operation and administration. Something else starts to happen. When you're in the counterfeit of that, it's called the occult. That's where demons come upon you, certain things, demons that might be within you, organize and galvanize in order to make you more powerful than you are without them. And so you'll see individuals that have a kind of a charisma, a strange fascination about them. And it draws people in, and they see in the person whatever it is they're looking for. And I mentioned Obama. He's so very popular, but I'll tell you what turned me on to the realization about him was when Paul talked about false apostles, those that come as angels of light. They have a leadership gift. They have charisma. They pull you in. You sing when you're around them, but they're not delivering anything. If you go to see what they've given, they planted the seeds of division and hatred in the language of love and unity. So with Kamala, you have a Jezebel spirit, a characteristic in the Bible, that is the personification of intimidation, seduction, domination, and manipulation. 4 strains. There's the against an opponent. Suddenly it's intimidating, it's dominating, it's manipulating. This is her background with men and with courts and with her cases that she did in California. It's been the way that she picked off Biden. How did she end up becoming the vice president candidate? She went and played the race card in a debate. Intimidation and manipulation and domination. She humiliated him and betrayed him in front of all of America, accusing him of being a racist, attacking the little girl who had to be bussed around, and he has a record of that bad policy, and she was a victim. In a sense, he had to do reparations to her and put her on the ticket as someone who balances out the commitment of the Democratic Party to that minority vote, because they can't afford to lose that 13% of the population or they could never get elected. So she manipulated her way into. She failed as a politician, couldn't even pass the test of getting voted. She quit, but she had done her job, and they pulled her, boom, and put her in as a running mate. So what I'm saying is you've got a very powerful intimidation, manipulation, domination. Trump even looked a little flustered because you could see between the moderators and her, he wasn't able to he couldn't fight back the way he wants to fight. So that's the other part is seduction. So Jezebel in the Bible made herself up and put her hair up in tiaras and had makeup on. And then Jehu was coming and she begins a dialogue with him sitting silhouetted up sexy in the window. So what you've got is you've got the seduction aspect of how the left wants to package a celebrity. And that seduction can become a mental seduction. And it begins to seduce you to seeing them. And it's what Obama did. He said, I am a blank slate. They write on me whatever their dream is. My job is to intentionally be as non-committed as possible while I win their trust, because they will write on me what they see on me. So Kamala has the advantage of what's called a snap election. This is my only concern about what happened when Trump debated Biden. I saw what happened in France. Once again, I go to Europe to look at the United States. And Macron was up against Le Pen. Le Pen is the conservative nationalist, populist.
Right.
Macron is the old school, Obama type. But she was gaining ground, just like Biden, just like Trump was gaining momentum. So he called for a quick switcheroo. He switched up his party and required a 60-day election so that there was no machinery in place to expose what the policies were that they were up against. And what he did was he shrunk the amount of time for the election and manipulated the messaging so that the people ended up getting what they really didn't want. But Le Pen was in third place instead of first. When that happened, I wrote a letter to my people. I said, what worries me about what can happen is if Biden gets pulled out and Kamala gets put in, it will be a snap election where there will not be enough time to pierce the veil of the cosmetic do-over. And it's going to require a work of God. Now, fortunately, if you got a Jezebel, you have an Elijah. So we have to double down in intercessory prayer, in the warfare mode of Pentecostals. We also have to come together in higher unity. I'm distressed by the division that exists in the church. All the fault lines are showing up now, scandals and incrimination. We need to close ranks and actually begin to get in a superlative agreement over what we believe we're hearing God say he wants to manifest. Because this election's coming 5 days after Halloween, another high holy day for all the Satanist crazy people. So we've got to literally, I'm in a place of fasting and prayer now because I'm saying we've got to lean into this thing because the Elijah mantle can break the spell of witchcraft off America. God can tear the veil. And unless that veil is torn, we have a lot working against us.
That's right. That's so powerful.
Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I mean, you talked about it. What it sounded to me was like a demonic anointing that they operate in, which it is. And if you think about hope and change, Obama's message, false hope, false change, he actually ushered in a lot of these evil policies that we're now dealing with, even with the trans stuff and all this other stuff's going on. You have Kamala, she's saying joy. It's a false joy. We know that the joy of the Lord is our strength. I want to ask you this question about authority. And because you really got into this good, and I think a lot of people are on the fence. You know, how long will you falter between two masters? Christians, pastors, what should people be saying from the pulpit? What should we be saying to our friends that maybe are on the fence, that do proclaim to be Christians, that somehow don't understand the spiritual battle? What can we do right now at this very moment? Of course, fast and pray. But what's on your heart, Lance?
All right, so this is so important. 1 in 3 Christians will not be voting. And those that do vote don't all vote intelligently either. 1 in 3. That means 25 million Christians, we believe, in the United States have big mouths about what's going on. They talk prophecy, they talk rapture, they talk about ministers and preachers, but they actually don't believe their vote makes a difference. So they don't vote. Whatever will be, it's all rigged. Whatever God's going to do is God's going to do. Or, you know, I believe that, like in California, the nutty one was the worse things get, the faster Jesus is coming back. So there's dumb reasons why Christians don't vote. But 25 million, if we could just get 10% of them to vote, we could reform America. So Mario and I, when we were doing our swing state work, we had a group that we work with. I'm going to take a pen out, and all of you got to get this now. It's called rightnow2024.org. Here's what they do. They pay for the postage for a Christian to write a letter to another Christian. They've got the addresses.
Wow.
They will mail the letter, and they give you sample letters. They say, all we need to do is to hit maybe 100 or 200,000 of those Christians that really don't realize this is a step of faith. Regardless of the outcome of the election, you put a seed into the ground and you stood in agreement with God for government to be a blessing in your life. Yet that act of faith is a boomerang that'll protect you from bad government. So there's a real reason to vote, even if what's the use? I live in a Democrat state. You still vote because it's a spiritual act with a spiritual harvest. So what we're looking for, Mario, is with right now 2024.org. We're just looking to raise up a couple of thousand of letter writers who, from the solitude of, they don't got to go door knocking. Awesome. They don't got to go downtown. No. They just got to sit down. We'll send you the Christian who's a bench warmer caught between two opinions, and we'll show you what to write. And you can just write, brother or sister, friend, now more than ever, I believe God is raising up a mighty remnant. You might think your vote doesn't matter, but God laid you on my heart for a reason. You do matter, and what you do matters. Little things can have big results, and I'm praying that you will indeed register to vote and show up. If someone gets a letter like that, handwritten from another believer, trust me, it has a sobering effect on you because it's not an appeal for money. It's not advertising. And this is the grassroots stuff, Mario. This is the stuff that we've been doing with the tour that I have to believe is going to have its aggregate impact as that snowball keeps rolling. Yes, because 1 in 3 Christians isn't voting, but if we've got their address, we can contact them and encourage them, and then let the Spirit and lay hands on that letter. Ask the Holy Ghost to touch them when they read it, and watch what happens.
You know, I'm so feeling the fire of God right now that I want to look in the camera and just say this to everyone who's watching. We have a model of what to do right now in this hour, and I'm only going to take a little while to say this because we're not done with this show. Paul was bitten by a viper when he was on the island of Malta. Everyone looked at him and said, he is a criminal. He's a murderer. And though he should have drowned in the sea, justice has made it possible for him to die from a snake bite. Paul didn't know that. He shook off the serpent into the fire. Then the minds of the people changed. If you were discouraged by the debate last night, shake it off right now. Shake it off right now into the fire. And understand that the viewpoint of Americans can change in an instant by the power of God. The very people that thought Paul was a criminal and a murderer suddenly began to understand he was not that at all. He was something else. ABC News wants you to believe one thing. Kamala Harris is a terrible candidate. She's going to be a puppet, but at least she's not Trump. So they want you to see him as a murderer and a criminal when in fact he is been sent to the kingdom for such a time as this. This is our stand. Shake it off, move on, because now God wants to raise us up. Get back up, get in the race, and don't give up. Now is not the time to do it. And that's why the devil wants us to do it so badly. So Lance, I want to ask you a final question.
I love what you're saying, Mario. I love what you're saying. That's why I'm going to stop right there, because what you said about the alchemy of the people that were watching Paul, that all thought one thing, and then in a moment of him defying the venom and letting that serpent die in that fire, what happened then was their minds, the Greek really talks about their minds change. It was as though there was a chemistry that took place, and they went from saying he's a criminal to thinking he's divine. And the reason why that's important is Trump's head in Butler, Pennsylvania, was facing in such a way that the bullet would have shattered the back of his skull. He looked like this. In a nanosecond, the bullet that was heading to the back of his head clipped the side of his head a millimeter away from his skull, and it slipped right over his ear. And what the Lord showed me then is that God in a moment can move the head and reorient what the enemy means for destruction of America. In a moment, God can sovereignly move the head of America and cause it to move in the right direction. And I think last night it might be that an easy victory would not have been a good thing for us, because God is training our hands for war. It's going to be tough. If Trump succeeds in the endeavor and he's put in, all of hell will disrupt. You will see riots that'll be taking place. And it's going to require Christians that can be strong in the Lord. So either way, we're going to have to kind of like put on the harness for the conflict with the powers of darkness. And I agree. I admit that last night I got a little upset when I watched it, because I had prayed so earnestly. And I thought, surely God will answer my prayer tonight, because he's supposed to do it. When I put the dollar in the vending machine, I'm supposed to get something out. And then the Lord said, I'm not a vending machine. Keep praying. Press in, young man, and endure hardness as a good soldier of the Lord Jesus Christ. So I realized I got to endure a little bit here.
We got 30 seconds left, and it couldn't have ended better. But now, Todd, I'm going to give you the last word. You got 30 seconds.
All right. Well, listen, armor up is the key, and don't get discouraged. And as Lance just so eloquently said, how many cases have been against Trump? How many times have they tried to take this guy down? There's clearly something going on, and I believe the spotlight is on the church. And so can we just pray right now, Lord? We just thank you for every truth that has been spoken tonight. There's been an anointing on this broadcast. And I pray that as we leave tonight, folks would be encouraged. They'd be strengthened in their faith. They'd have tenacity, boldness, stick-to-itiveness, and that we would get very, very aggressive in the fact that we pray, we fast, we speak boldly from the pulpits in America. And as Lance said, we come together as a unified front in this very critical moment, because I believe, Lord, you want to spare this nation. So it's an if my people moment, and I believe it's time to take a righteous stand.